You're listening to the Business Mike podcast. Amazing interviews with entrepreneurs and industry thought leaders.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business Mike podcast. And joining me today is Sonia. Sonia, can you just let the audience know a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Thank you, Daudi, and good morning to you. So, in brief, in summary, my name is Sonia Karamagi Kasagga. I am a seasoned marketer and a customer experience professional. I have worked only in the financial services sector, and I can't say that I fully understand the industry. I've also, studied marketing, practiced marketing. I think in my career, I have done that for about 14 years, being in the marketing field. So I think marketing is in my blood, if you're to say that. It's in my DNA and it comes easy. What can I say? I'm a chartered marketer as well. I am fascinated about how brands have an influence into society. And in my recent articles, I've written about that quite a bit. I think that the latest being Raving Fans, and how I'm just really, blown out at how brands influence individuals, influence communities and societies. So I guess for me, that's I'm always curious to understand and to know what next, what happens. I'm a mother. I'm also a wife. I have 3 beautiful children. And on the other side as well, I'm interested in programs that build and uplift women and children in society. I have a passion for that. I think in a nutshell, that's Sonia.
Right. That's lovely to hear. And how did you, with all that happening, decide to take your marketing journey specifically to customer experience? Why focus on that in particular? How did you end up there?
That's an interesting story, Daudi. So like I mentioned, I have done marketing for most of my career life. And while at it, I interacted a lot with data, customer data, in form of marketing research, customer feedback. So we are in a business, the world is evolving, so we just need to keep updated every second, every minute. Right now, we just need to be able to, keep ahead of everything when it comes to customers. So I found myself, because of my curious mind, I kept asking myself, what more can be done? Why is it that the data is, and for many years, we, in the organization that I work for, we kept asking ourselves, how come we're staying in the same position when it comes to customers giving us feedback, when we look at the different KPIs, whether it's NPS, CSAT, customer engagement, why isn't it that the data is not shifting in a positive way? And for me, it was one of those things where I intentionally put my hand up to say, I want to be in the working groups that are actually solutioning for the customer. What that meant is, you try and understand context, engage the customers every now and then. I would be involved in a lot of the focus group discussions, immersions, and all that stuff that we do for research. And I had keen interest, and, just coming back and saying, no, we need to solution for the root cause, work with the internal team, say, how best can we do this? And I think for me, that is where, that's the beginning of my passion for the customer, because I realized, listen, I'm actually interested in, making things better for the customer. But also, Daud, if you think about it, you as an individual, you are a customer for so many organizations. So I started observing when I would go, whether it's a restaurant or whether it's a clothing store, I started observing how the front end would treat me. And I kept putting myself in, this is something that even the customer that walks into the bank or interacts with us at whatever touch point, this is what they expect. So what is so hard? And it's very simple things, the basics. So just really trying to put myself in the customer's shoes and feeling like, no, I am going to save the world. I think I have a place and I can add value. I got interested and I took a shot. And recently, like I mentioned, I'm the customer experience head at Stanbic. I applied for the role 2 years ago, and I got the role, and I'm excited. I'm loving it. I'm discovering. I'm learning, and hopefully we will get to a place where we are, completely excited and happy about the journey, the customer journey.
Yeah, I want to pull on that thread, particularly because you work in a financial services company. And from your perspective, what has the landscape looked like in terms of putting the customer first, or how the customer has evolved? Because I know it's a very competitive space, and ideally your edge comes from the experience you give your customers. So what does that look like from your perspective over the years?
That's an interesting question, and I'm glad you've asked. So when I think 10 years back, maybe 10 years back, the customer experience, if I think about the field and in banking and financial services specifically, it has greatly evolved. And I say this because, one, the expectation from the public, from your stakeholders, is quite high. One, you are a financial services, you're in the financial services sector, so the expectation is up there. People expect you to deliver a great, or at least a consistent experience across board. Now, one thing that we need to know is we are in the service of money exchange as financial services, and we all know how money is of high importance and value. So already that puts us at, the expectation is quite high. And as a financial services sector, we're in the business of risk management. So you see, these are two big items where you need to be able to mirror risk management and customer experience while handling money. So it's just like you and myself. Your money, you will know how much you take note. It's different from a different, a product that is offered elsewhere. But if it's money, there's keen interest. Yeah. So the thing is, we have gotten to a point where organizations and financial services need to mirror the two, which is risk and customer experience. Because in my view, they work in tandem. You can't focus on risk management and completely ignore customer experience. But the challenge we're facing in the industry now is trying to, mirror the two, see how we can deliver exceptional customer experience while heightening the focus on risk. So you find that where we start to drop the ball and the challenges start to emerge is, what do I need to do, but be mindful. So the industry has evolved, and I must say that organizations now, or companies now, need to seriously think of how customer experience principles need to be embedded into risk management strategies, so that when you go out and face the customer, when you interact with the customer, it becomes easier. I'll tell you one thing for sure. When you have a bad experience, for example, you call into contact center and you're not getting a response in whatever time you have you haven't actually gotten through. That's a risk on its own. So once we begin to mirror and understand that risk management and customer experience work hand in hand, then it will become a lot easier for financial services to be in a better place to deliver delightful and great experience. But going back to the point of the industry, the society, the communities have evolved. Back in the day, customer experience was looked at as a front-end function. If you went to a bank, for example, you would interface more with your teller, your service, the person at the service inquiries desk, or you'd actually call into your contact center. And for the customer, for the longest time, it was, I had a bad service. And it's things like there's teller A or cashier A or personal banker A served me wrongly. I think that has evolved in the sense that customer experience is no longer a front-end function. It's now everyone's business in the organization. It doesn't matter where you're seated. It doesn't matter if you're in the legal function, in the risk function, in the marketing function, you name it. And until we continue to heighten the responsibility and ownership or accountability of those functions, the front end will continue to be frustrated. So we can't continue to look at the front end as the owners of delivering exceptional service. It has to work in tandem. I think the other, thing that has changed for me has been the whole digital transformation journey. We are more digitized than before. Everything is being digitized. AI is in the call centers. AI is in your processes, in everything that you're doing, in your systems, your processes. So if you think today, how am I being onboarded, or how am I joining a certain organization? What is the onboarding process? Is it simplified to a point where I actually don't need paperwork or documentation? It's all digitized. And going back to my point earlier, you have to heighten the risk management, because even as much as you're simplifying work for the organization and most importantly for the customer, the risk is also heightened. So there's a lot of with digital innovation and transformation, which is a good thing because there's a lot of good that has come out of that. But we also have to be aware that with the transformation, there's a lot of challenges that come along with that. So I can say the industry has evolved, especially in financial services. It's every day there's something new. There's something new we are learning. Customers are more empowered. They are more informed. Customers have choice. So you can't. It's not. We can't get into our levels of comfort where the customer will come back. You can't. You have to keep on your feet, keep updated with the customer, and really, really get everybody to understand the importance of customer experience. Yes.
Yeah, I'd actually like to touch on what you just said towards the end there with the digital transformation. It's something that has suddenly taken off as you find apps for banks doing pretty much everything they would otherwise be doing at the teller side. But from your perspective, how do you cater to all customers? And I'll give an example of an old man who loves coming into the bank, taking some coffee, chatting with the people there, and all of a sudden he's told, "Oh no, you can do all that on your phone," and he feels like he's been robbed of that experience, that human experience. So how do you strike the balance? Because on the other side as well, I could call in and a machine can solve all my problems. It could be one of those automated voice responses. Yet I want to speak to a human being, but the AVR can actually do everything that I want, but I want the human touch. So how do you find the balance between the two of those?
Well, I think, and I'll speak for Stanbic. We understand that the culture in the country, in our market, is still very what you'd call very. We're still. We are not fully digitized. We still have that analog effect. And getting back to what you said, the human connection cannot be erased. And for the longest time, that is what people want. Yes, digital is fantastic. It's great. And I think the people that are embracing it for us, it's a win. We want as many people to embrace digital because there's so much that comes with it. But we also understand that a huge population still want that human connection. Yeah. And just for Stanbic, you'll notice that as much as we have transpired into the digital journey, we have maintained the physical touch points. In every region, in every corner of Uganda, we do have a physical presence where that old man that you talked about can either walk into one of our branches, can go into an agent where they'll be able to interface and interact. We do understand that it is a journey that will not happen overnight. It's going to take time. And as the customer walks into any of our touch points, we handhold and take them through that process. And for some, it will never happen and it's okay. It will never happen and it's fine. At the end of the day, how comfortable is the customer with your channels of service or systems of operations? And for me, customer experience is it's not entirely digitization. No, it isn't. It is, where is your customer most comfortable in doing business with you, in interacting with you? So we've maintained a lot of those physical touch points. In the event a customer wants a physical body, wants to find out more, and also the literacy levels, to be quite honest. Even when we are opening up an account, it's a regulatory requirement for you to be able to have the customer consent to, am I literate? If I'm not, then what? So imagine you have that on a digital platform. How else is the customer going to understand? So we have to match the human connection with the functional ability that the digital platforms are coming up with. So we've tried as much as possible to maintain that. And I think for us, it's working. Like I said, it will be a long journey to slowly transition our customers into digitization in the long run.
Yeah, and that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin, obviously, is internally. So how do you, sensitize or let people within the organization appreciate how important the customer is and try and do their work in such a way that it all helps the customer at the end of the day? Because as you know, organizations have challenges where people in their own silos do things in a way that might not necessarily be beneficial to the customer, and they don't see how that impacts the organization overall. So how do you manage to get everyone on side, particularly with culture?
Yeah, and Dowdy, that's a very interesting question because culture shapes so many things. Culture in the organization shapes your behavior, your attitude, your well-being as an individual that works for that organization. So culture is a huge aspect. And I think for me, the beginning point is, if we want a culture of being customer-centric, for example, and that's what really most organizations are aiming for, how do we get everybody on board? It starts with the leadership, and in the leadership there, what is the view of the organization? What is the vision you have for the organization? And for individuals to buy in, for your people to buy in, is it clear? Is there clarity in stating that vision or your purpose? Is it clear that we see that this is a customer-centric organization? So if the vision and the purpose are clear, then it becomes easier for the leadership to start to unpack it further. So it starts from, how do I set the organization vision? And when it comes to really breaking it down to your teams, it's got to make sense for everybody in the organization. The other day, someone says, how does the Stanbic vision make sense for, say, a person in the till, or someone seated in back office in maybe an operations team? You have to simplify and be able to demonstrate what it means for you in operations, what it means for you to serve a customer and get a delightful experience in, for example, as a cashier. So it just doesn't stop at having that 2-line or 3-line vision statement. No, go ahead and make people understand what it means for them. If the front end, if a customer is has given you a rating of 10 out of 10, for example, if your NPS is shooting the lights out, how did you contribute to that? And once you start to get people to think about their contribution into a delightful or a terrible experience, and people start to think about, oh, so I did this in the credit process because the evaluation team failed to do this on time, it actually impacted the customer negatively. So it's important that we just don't stop at the vision and sharing the vision statement, but it has to make sense for the people who are actually doing the work. And I guess that's where employee engagement comes in. For any culture, you have to heighten the engagement of the internal teams. How are we engaging the teams? Is the communication clear? And again, when we say clarity, what does it mean for me? So I think for me, that is the biggest, that is where transformation begins to happen. And that's where people begin to see themselves in this customer journey. How do I fit in? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And yourself as an individual, actually, one of the reasons why I reached out to have you on the podcast was because of the blogs you write. And one that stood out for me was when you went with your family on a holiday, and yes, you had quite an exceptional experience. So just for the people watching and listening, can you just share that story?
Yeah. So I just wanted to, I think that was the article I think it was the title. For those of you who are on LinkedIn, you can actually look me up. Sonia Kasagga. The title was They Want You, Do They Need You? And basically the gist of my story, of my piece was, how does the internal team or your internal customers, your people in the organization, play a huge part in delivering a customer experience? And I spoke about a trip we recently took to one of the lodges in the country as a family. And I sort of connected the dots on how our expectations were really, really, really high. But because the lodge where we were going, they had been trained to handle customers in a very we were blown. And when I say I was blown, I'm a person of very high expectations. So we looked up this lodge online, and as we were heading there, the first trigger for me was we were already, I think, an hour or so late. And I received a call from the admin staff to say, listen, Mrs. Kasagga, we know that you're coming with your family. It's already 1.5 hours late. Would like to find out if everything is okay. And for me already that softened, because the journey itself, you have children in the car, it's a long journey. So by the time you get to your final destination, you're ticked off. You just want to find everything readily available. So already that got me thinking, wow, this is amazing. So even when we got there, the team at the concierge, actually right from the gate, they were readily available. They knew we were going to arrive in the next was it, I think 40 or 50 minutes. So they had sort of prepared everybody. They could tell that when they were speaking to me, as much as I told them we are two families, they could tell in the background because there were kids, crying in the car that were moving in. So they could tell that this is a family that is going to get to the desk here already exhausted. So how do we even make it, lighter for them? So when we got there, they already knew there were kids, there were balloons, there was all this. There was what are they called? An interesting clown. There was all these things that happened. So for me, already everybody was excited, were in full spirits at the reception. They knew all of us by name. They knew what we wanted. For things that they knew we had requested for and were not readily available, they told us ahead of time. And they gave us alternatives. And for me, that was it. We are a journey that we already knew we were going to have a good time. So that in maybe in few words, that's really what the story is about. But you see how the connection, because the internal team fully understood the importance of having a great experience, being able to serve your guests to a point where they're blown away, was just, for me, it was the coordination. It was everybody in the organization. So that was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I brought that up, is because it tied perfectly into what you're speaking about earlier, in terms of engaging your employees and helping them understand. Because from your story, those employees' experience of you experiencing their service is part of it as well. Seeing a smile on a customer's face, means a lot to them, and that's why they work so hard to do that.
Yeah.
Right. We're coming to the end of the interview, but just before we let you go, in summary, for anyone that's listening to this, that's a decision maker in an organization that hasn't really embraced customer experience or appreciated how it can help their business, how or what pieces of advice would you have for them?
I think for both businesses and individuals who are looking at transforming their organizations into being more customer-centric, I think for me it starts with having a curious mind, and curious in the sense of who is the person I'm serving? What is my customer telling me? And just unpacking that further, because there's one thing, organizations will have data. The thing about data, if data is not backed up by context, there's a few things that you lose out, because the data will tell you, and I'll talk about the metrics that we use in customer experience. If it's a customer satisfaction, it will tell you you're 70%. Your customer satisfaction index is 70%. And looking beyond just the number, what is it that is making the organization 70%? And how can I even get that to 100? So there's a lot of context that we need to unpack, not just look at the surface. So having a curious mind to say, okay, if it's 70%, what is the verbatim behind it? And if I get to know the reasoning behind the number, what am I doing? Where in my list of priorities, how am I solutioning? So that all ties into being curious as leaders in the organization, as individuals in the organization. You might not be in a leadership position, but if a customer walked into the banking hall and you can observe certain things in the interaction, let it not just be customer walked in, got served, and walked away. Try and dig in, try and involve, get yourself involved and concerned about, those nonverbal attributes that you see. You can tell if it's a long queue, customer is standing there. What are you doing? Are you just seated on your desk and saying he'll eventually get to the till? No. Approach the customer. That curiosity that organizations need to get to, for me, will be the beginning of understanding how best we can actually move from point A to from point Z to point A if I'm to look at it that way. But it's really having a curious mind and being able to solution for the root cause, and of course understanding the context. So for me, if organizations and leaders and individuals had that in them, then it would be a lot easier. It would come naturally. Yeah.
Right. That brings us to the end of the interview. But before we go, how can people connect with you, see your work, and read your articles?
So, like I mentioned, I am on LinkedIn. If you go and just search Sonia Kasagga, I will show up. So I think that the easiest would be on LinkedIn. Reach me out on there. But also, I'm on email. So if anybody would want to further connect, they could drop me an email on my personal or work email. Personal would be kramsoni@gmail.com. And for my work email address, that would be karamagi@stanbic.com.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Sonia, for sharing your story and experience today. I'm sure everyone listening and watching has learned quite a bit, and we wish you the very best and hope for happy customers in your direction.
Absolutely. And thank you, Daudi. I must say, you sharing your platform with the rest of the world, getting to share stories and learn from different professionals across the globe is quite fantastic. I think the more we talk about certain matters that of interest, especially when it comes to customer experience, the more informed we get. We also get to, learn from what other organizations are doing. I always tell people it's not rocket science. There's information everywhere. We just need to look for it. So for you to be able to bring this platform to everybody and make it accessible for everyone is just amazing. And thank you for the great work that you're doing.